Here we go. Roll video.
I think anybody creating something new must have an adventure.
It's not cinema, it's something else.
My advice to a young filmmaker is to make a movie every week.
The whole bag of movies can be learned in about a day and a half.
But suspense is essentially an emotional process.
You gotta make films. You gotta make it and get it seen.
Cinema for me is a world of when I dream.
Welcome to Behind the Slate, everybody. I am your host, Aaron Strand. I want to thank you so much for tuning in as we approach our second and final shoot for Withdrawal. Be sure to follow us on Instagram, the film on Instagram, that is, at Withdrawal Film. And if you've been enjoying these interviews and updates, please be sure to rate and review on whichever podcasting app you use. Hit us with the 5 stars, leave a few nice words. We would greatly appreciate it. Now, today, my guest is a dear friend of mine, and I feel so honored to call her a collaborator on this film project as well. Jeanne Heaton is an artist and yoga teacher based in Athens, Georgia. Now, I first met her at Fuel Hot Yoga in Athens, but soon learned that we had more in common than I could have ever imagined. It's one of these like strange parallel lives type of circumstances. Anyway, she is currently playing the role of Edith, a mother struggling to come to terms with her daughter's addiction in my film Withdrawal. And I'm just so grateful that she took the time to talk with us today. Ladies and gentlemen, Jeanne Heaton. Jeanne, how are you doing today?
Aaron, thank you. I'm great. Thanks for that beautiful intro. I'm wonderful. I'm grateful to be here. And thanks for asking me to not only be a part of your podcast, but casting me as Edith. I'm so excited.
Oh, absolutely. You absolutely blew me away with your audition tape. It was such a joy and like really unexpected because like, you know, it's like I knew that you had this incredible training, which like we'll get into, and this incredible background, but it wasn't on the forefront of my mind as I was like creating the role. So, and you really advocated like, hey, I want to send you a tape. And I'm just so glad that you did, because I saw it and was just like, oh my God.
Oh, Aaron, can I tell you that story? So when you had come to Athens to do the podcasting workshop, which was incredible, I had signed up for that like a month before. That morning, I was like, oh, I don't know. Should I go do this? Like, oh, just pay the money, do the thing. Like, you need to get out in the world and do something other than yoga, get in community, do something fun for yourself. And that morning I did a little deep dive on your Instagram, and I saw the post that you needed the mom for the movie Withdrawal. And I was like, yeah. Oh my God. So when I showed up and I got out of the car, and I was like, hey, you should cast me as that part of the mom as in your movie. And you went, yeah. And nothing more was said. And I was like, oh, I'm such a dumbass. I'm so stupid, because you have like podcasting workshop on your mind. You're like, this is the first time you presented, which was brilliant, by the way. And so I'm in there kind of beating myself up, which is sort of a default for me, sitting at the thing going, why did I say I'm so stupid? Like, and then I was like, no, it's fine. Don't even worry about it. And that night I went home and I'm thinking to myself, I don't know if he really knows you're an actor. I don't know how much he really knows about your act. I mean, he knows that you've been writing and you're a writer, but so maybe you need to advocate. And I was like, just going to let it go. And then, I heard some voices coming in, which is, Michael, my partner who recently died. Well, not recently, but he was the guy I'd been with for 30 years. And I heard him say, honey, he's a New Yorker. You got to be in it to win it, babe. You got to be in it to win it. And I just heard that. And I was like, you know what? I'm just going to send Aaron a direct message that says, hey, look, it's been 100 years since I've acted, but would you let me, give me a shot at this? And you were like, hell yeah. You were so freaking cool. you replied like so freaking cool. Like, yeah, I'll send you the sides. Can you self-tape? So you're so cool.
Oh man. Well, let's start with that training that you had, because this is really like, I think, our first kind of like connection point, right? Which is that you in 1981 you attended the theater program at NYU. And like myself and our director of photography, Emily Marquet, you attended the Stella Adler Studio of Acting. So,
Yes.
so first of all, what made you want to pursue a drama degree?
Oh, so I grew up in Western Pennsylvania, and kind of like a small coal town outside of Latrobe, Pennsylvania, like Rolling Rock beer, home of the beer, and it was really like, I saw my future as like, double wides, coal towns, steel mills, really, it really was like Deer Hunter, growing up in the blue collar. My dad was like an engineer for steeling how to cut steel, and my brothers worked in the steel, it was just that vibe. And I was like, I got to get the freaking hell out of here as fast as I possibly can so that I can make a life for myself. And I was always involved in theater in high school, and I did the play, and I did the musical, and, I would barely get the lead in the musical because I couldn't sing high enough, for Jesus Christ Superstar. Anyway, but I got the lead in the play in my senior year. And then when I was listening to Millie's podcast, she was like, and then I talked to her, I was like, you won forensics, didn't you? Like with debate. And I won forensics, and I just can't believe actually, all this kind of similar parallels. And then I auditioned for NYU and got into, actually I went to Syracuse my first year. So I went up to Syracuse and did the Arthur Storch program there for my first year. Met this really freaking cool guy. Oh my God, gorgeous boy, Josh Pice, who, lived in New York City on the Lower East Side. And he was graduating. He was a senior. And I was like, oh shit, I'm going to New York. He's like, you're coming to New York. And I went to New York, and I moved in with him on the Lower East Side, him and his mom. And we lived on 7th Street between C and D, because I got into Stella Adler. And yeah, the rest is history. There you go.
Wow. So you actually studied with Stella herself? She was still alive.
I did.
What was that like?
Oh my God, the queen, the royalty. It was, Aaron, it was so, God, everything's true at once. Like, it was crazy. She was ridiculous. She was incredible. She was amazing. She was like high on her own, whatever fame. She was rude, mean, disrespectful. And then she would hold you up on a pedestal and tell you how amazing you were. She was, she would endless lectures on tearing down Lee Strasberg. What is he doing over there? It's absolutely ridiculous. Calling upon real memories. What a bunch of shit. We're not doing that here. This is your imagination. So it was really cool, she was really, it was very intense. And I remember I did, her scene study was like, whew, and I had to do some pre-imaginary physical work for a scene. I can't even remember the scene now, but it was basically and I was playing a man in a war scene. I can't remember what it was, but I had to do all of this crazy stuff in that little black box. So we were right across from Carnegie Hall there. That was the old Stella place. And on 59th or 57th. And I remember just like acting like I'm getting shot at, and getting underneath the barbed wire and going through the war zone, and Stella just going, amazing, amazing, amazing. It's just such bullshit, honestly, Aaron. It's like, I look back at it, I'm like, oh my God, what the hell? But it was pretty incredible. And you and I know Ron Burrus. We knew Ron Burrus, who was also, he had probably more of an impact on me actually than Stella. Yeah. And then you went 20 years later or 30 years later.
Yeah.
God,
crazy. Just totally nuts. So did you finish the conservatory program?
No. So I left Adler and transferred to the experimental theater wing with Ron Argelander. And that was there right where you talk about being penniless and homeless, sitting outside the NYU building, 700 Broadway. Isn't that right there?
Yeah, of course.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's where the ETW wing was. And when you told that story everybody should listen to that podcast. I think it's Withdrawal 1. And that is exactly where I actually started to bottom out too.
So at the same time, like myself, you were also immersing yourself in the the New York art and club scene. First of all, like, what was that like in the early to mid 80s?
Incredible. I mean, living on the Lower East Side at that time was just absolutely so dangerous. I had to change my clothes to go in and out, and I would use a bike. I would bike out of there and lock it at 8th Street Astor Place to take the train up to school or wherever I had to go. And it was so junkie ridden and full of dealers that so where we lived, where Josh's place was on 7th between C and D, which they call the Oasis block. But to get out of there, you had to go through C and B. You had to go 7th all the way up to 1st, 2nd Avenue, which was really, really very dangerous. It was cool as shit though, because you had the Pyramid Club, you had all the really cool, amazing rock and roll clubs going on, punk scene going on. But it was also terrifying. And so I did what you did too, with the box, but where I got a job was waiting tables at this really amazing, cool place called Central Falls, where upstairs was the guy Willie, who was the bass player for Saturday Night Live Band. So they had all of their after parties at Central Falls, and so I was thinking, like, man, I have arrived. I am like waiting tables. Now, mind you, I'm a waitress.
Right.
Like your story with the box. It's like, I am not doing anything except like serving these people, like slinging drinks and, trying to get an audition for Pretty Baby, or I won't say names, but doing, some coke off the top of a toilet in the bathroom with many a few peeps hanging out in the back. Yeah. So that was my beginning into like really starting my fantastic drug career.
Had you used drugs at all, like growing up, like before getting the Lower East Side?
No. In fact, one time I smoked pot when I was in high school. It scared me so bad. In my family, there was a lot of addiction and violence and shit going on that I was like, there's no way I will ever throw my life away.
Yeah, but things can change real quick when you get to the city, and all of a sudden, like, cocaine's flying around like coffee.
And it also was like you've written in the film, that moment when Viv, is like, I just want to feel what you feel. That's that moment where you're watching people around you having these incredible experiences. And so that's where I was like, I just don't want to feel this pain. I had a lot of trauma growing up as a kid. So it felt like a relief, just want to feel relief. Yeah.
And that is one of those things that's like really tough about acting school as well, which, like, on the one hand, it's like, okay, you're getting a degree in playing make-believe, which is like somewhat ludicrous. But the thing that is really hard is that, like, part of the particularly like Stella's process is like kind of trying to strip you down to like this raw nerve where your emotions are available, and like cutting away the bullshit personality constructs that you inevitably like build up in your teens.
That's right.
Because they inhibit you from playing a character, right? Because
Yes.
you're already playing a character in your life, right? So trying to make you more accessible, but that it's a very raw process, and when you're young, you don't have the coping skills necessary to like sort of hold that space. It actually like it ties back to, you know, something that Ron Burris taught me, and is like the phrase of Ron's that has stuck with me my entire life. Rest in peace, Ron Burris.
Yes.
But he used to talk about that the greatest skill an actor needs to develop is having a talent for your talent. And what he was talking about was having the talent of basically practicing self-care as your creative talent is allowed to like run free, right?
Yes.
And that's the real task of a professional artist, is that talent. It's not the talent that God gave you with, it's developing the talent to control, contain, and not let that God-given talent, you know, drive you crazy.
Yes. And how, when you're filled with people who have harmed you, you know, growing up, and now you're asked to remove, like you just said, all of that so you can be a blank slate, while at the same time accessing, like all I could do, say in high school, was to access that part of me for the tears, for the reaction, for, you know, that, because I don't know any other way to on the spot access, you know, these kind of big emotions that were needed, especially as a young actor. And so when Ron Burris says something like, you know, a talent for your talent, like I didn't get that guidebook because I was the raw nerve just flying around New York City.
And in many ways, New York City is like the perfect place for that sort of energy, but it can, I mean, but that, you know, it can lead you to some pretty dangerous places. So,
Yes.
so you're in the experimental theater program, or perhaps you leave at this point. You're working at clubs. You're living in the Lower East Side. You know, what happened next?
I met this really beautiful boy who was working at Central Falls. Long hair, motorcycle jacket, leather motorcycle boots. They would yell at him all the time that he couldn't wear that to wait tables. And he was like, fuck you, I'm wearing whatever I want to wear. You want me to wait? He was a really, really sought after kind of waiter in New York. I don't even remember back in the day when like waiters were like, there were waiters, there were maitre d's, there were certain people who were making names for themselves. And like, it was like, if you wanted this guy, you know, his name was Shelby. God rest in peace, Shelby. And the two of us were like, God, we were so in love, Aaron. It was so weird. And Shelby moved to London. He had a rock and roll band. I took off with him to go to London and just never came back to New York.
At this point, had you decided that you were going to pursue music, or were you just following the guy?
I'm following the guy again. I'm following the glitz. I'm following and the dark, you know. He's rehearsing in these really cool rehearsal studios on 47th Street, 48th Street, you know, where all the rehearsal studios are. And I'm just like, and he's like actually manning a rehearsal studio. And when we're not waiting tables, we're staying up all night. We're playing like backgammon all night. We're doing like crazy things, like a lot of drugs, a lot of coke. And like when I met him, he had already had this decision to move his band to London because he thought that he could get a deal over there easier than in the States. And so I had no plans of going with them. And then the way things worked out, he was like, you got to get over here. You got to come over here. You got to do this. And in the meantime, think about being my keyboard player. So I was like, oh, I could do that. I could do that.
Look, I relate a lot to this. I mean, this sounds very like just late, my last 2 years of college / like years after kind of New York experience, a lot of coke. At what point did your drug taste kind of develop beyond just the coke?
Yeah. So I went over to London. He was staying just above this pub called the Hope and Anchor, which is actually where Sting, you know, the police used to play. And he was staying upstairs with this chick. And I was like, oh, that was another reason I was going over there. I'm like, what are you doing with her up in the, I don't know. Anyway, and I got there, and when I get there, I find out that he's doing this dope, and I find a syringe, and I find the tinfoil, and I find, they're chasing the dragon, and I find this little packet of thing, and I'm like, what are they shooting coke? Like, what is this stuff, And I put my finger in it. He was actually downstairs doing something with the pub, working, and I tasted this shit, and I'm like, whoa, what is that? And I put it aside, and then one night we're at this party. His bass player, he had gotten a British bass player. We were at this party. He was a big coke dealer. We'd gone to this party with the Gang of Four, and we're hanging out with them, and they're all smoking hash, chasing the drag. Hash so big in London, everybody's smoking hash, and they're telling everyone that it's hash, when in fact it was opiate oil, and they were squeezing it from a syringe, on the thing. Now, not the Gang of Four guys. It was just a Gang of Four party. So let me get that straight. I'm just saying. And I'm like, had one hit of this thing, and I thought I'd seen God. It was like literally the arms of God were wrapped around me. So I never felt such comfort and love and acceptance and warmth. And what was really weird about it too was we were in this apartment where you had to put the 50p pence in to keep the electric on. So like the electric would go off, and someone had to like scrounge for a 50p, coin, and so crazy. And everybody would, we would be like so high, we're nodding out, and we were itching and scratching, and it was so beautiful. I have to be honest about my first drug experience, because that's what I chased to oblivion, and I remember just trying to walk over, because it was my turn to put a 50 pence piece in, and I remember trying to walk over to get there, and I couldn't get there. I couldn't, and I was just, it was like tripping. It was so crazy. Nobody slept that night. We got home. I remember they had to keep stopping. We were in a little VW Bug, and they had to keep stopping this Bug so that I could puke, just vomiting the whole way home. And you would throw up, and then it would be like, oh, that was great. Like, it's not the kind of vomit with a drink or a drunk where you're so sick. It's the kind of release of even more endorphins, God.
Yeah.
And then we moved into it. We squatted in this park in Finsbury Park, right above a guy who was a morphine addict. And in England, when you're an opiate addict, they send you morphine in the mail. And it's literally stamped Her Majesty the Queen. And it's in the mailbox. And you're like, what? I mean, even the toilet paper is stamped Her Majesty the Queen. So, I don't know how much weight you want to put on any of it, but that was kind of eye-opening. And he had two sweet little girls, and he was a single dad, and he was really strung out. And I remember thinking to myself, I can't mess with this drug ever again. I can't fuck with this again. Coke is one thing. This is another thing. I'm never touching this again. Shelby and I made a decision that this was just too dangerous. We'll just stick with the Coke, keep it right there. Yeah.
And everything went according to plan, right?
Yeah, perfect. We stayed, we played out in clubs. No one could get their shit together. We had this weird manager. No one could show up. Everyone was hungover or drunk. One night we have this horrific fight because he thinks that I took all the Coke, which more than likely I did, and hid it somewhere. And he smashed his guitar, put his foot right through the fucking guitar. That's why when I read your film, I'm just like, what? Like, he smashed his acoustic guitar, which was like his fate, which is what he wrote every single thing on. So now, and that's like, there weren't these little, it wasn't so easy to just hook up your amp and, like like sit there and work. You had to go to the rehearsal studio because that's where all the gear was. And it was really sort of the end of the band. Then we got this job waiting tables on Kings Road. I was also working in a shoe shop on the Kings Road. We were just trying to save up our money to get out of there. They had taken our passports. They were getting ready to deport us. Finally, the word came down, you're deported, get out. And so we ended up getting deported, and we came back to the States, and I couldn't return to England for another 9 years.
No, yeah, I'm glad you left a good old fashioned trail of destruction.
There you go.
In your wake.
Yeah, fuck y'all and the guitar.
Yeah. Oh man, that's good stuff. That's good stuff. So let's keep it moving here. So that's okay. So you guys are back in New York, and so I know a little bit of sort of where this is going, but let's jump ahead to, so is it with Shelby that you formed the band? And
yeah, and then we got a band, we formed the band, and we moved in with his mom and dad on this island in Florida, on this barrier island called North Captiva, where the hurricane just came through there. And we were living there, and we were trying to make some music. We were clean. We were maybe drinking. We'd go down island. They call it down island. We'd go down island to get some Coke here and there. But, pretty much we were doing really well there. And then we kind of wore out our welcome, though. He didn't get along with his dad. And then we went to see my mom in California. We lived there for a while. It's living with the parents, trying to stay clean and sober because we knew this was a problem. And then we moved in with my dad, and we made these little demo tapes, and we sent out 48 blind demo tape submissions to record companies everywhere. And we got 2 responses, one from Arista and one from Chrysalis Records and from CBS. And Chrysalis Records signed us. And they gave us this $300,000 record deal. And we were like, and they gave us we gave us this big loft in New York City, right above a bread factory, an Italian bakery, right off Elizabeth Street.
Whoa.
I know. On Spring, we get a producer. We make the record. We go to California to make the record. We're trying, to keep our noses clean, but we just can't keep our nose out of the coke. And we end up, making this album, which was 2 months in the studio, 48-track album. It's way too big. It was during the time of the late 80s, early 90s, Thompson Twin sounds, like it was just 2 24-track machines hooked up, way too big, like just a wall of fucking sound. So we're trying to get the record released, and the guy who's running Chrysalis Records at that time is our A&R guy, this guy Bruce Dickinson, not the Bruce Dickinson from Heavy Metal, but a different Bruce Dickinson, amazing human being, beautiful human being, sober, clean human being, just our champion. Adored us, loved us, believed in us. And his boss was way into the coke too much too, just big coke time. And he didn't want to release our album. And I thought it was all our fault. I didn't find out until I rehooked up with Bruce again years later that, this guy didn't want to release our album, and it was never coming out. And so when the album wasn't coming out and the money was all gone and the drugs were drying up, and we're like, God, man, what are we going to do? And we got this little drummer who was doing heroin, and he was like, look, this shit's going to solve your coke problem. Like, just all you need is $10. Let's go. And I was like, oh, here we go. And just having that previous experience, I was like, maybe, yeah. And that's what happened. We just started snorting dime bags of heroin, and we kept that going pretty well. We would be weekend warriors with it. And then we would put it down, and we would go through the chippy, we would, they call it a chippy when you're just like a little bit sick, the runny nose, the flu, like we just got to get through this day, man. If we use today, we're going to be done. It's going to be done. It's going to be over. And one day it was just too much. And we just used, and we snorted, and that was the beginning of the end. And again, this is another parallel to the movie where we're in that loft and everybody's hanging out and people are starting to shoot up, and I'm like, I'm never shooting up, Aaron. I'm never shooting up. I'm telling everyone, I am never shooting up. And the next moment I know, I just put my arm out and I close my eyes and I turn and Shelby ties me off and that was it. And that was the beginning of the end.
At this point, what were you feeling? What were you thinking? Because I know from my own story, there's this like I thought my life was supposed to be this one thing, and like feeling the failure of that. And then I too, and another crazy parallel, like I stopped acting to be a musician in New York, and in some ways, like it was just looking back, it was almost like I just felt like my addiction like fit more neatly like into that box, or like I was a better drug addict musician than I was a drug addict actor, because I was showing up to auditions strung out, and I just knew that I somewhere deep inside of me knew that the it was unsustainable, but that playing music seemed to be a more viable path for that, but then that didn't work out, and now it's just like repeated failures and disappointments, and that's when the like, fuck it, let's just do the thing that like I've really wanted to be doing all along, which is just being a full-time junkie.
Yeah. I think you put it so beautifully, like in the theme of the film is like when you have the flashbacks of this over these 12 hours of withdrawing, kind of, and everybody in the film is trying to go back and look at that moment, like, when did it all go wrong?
Right.
When did it all go wrong? And what made that decision to just, it's not even a moment of, fuck it, let's just get high. It's so much deeper in that it's like, I'm a failure. I had such high dreams and goals and I just don't know how to do it. I thought I was doing it right. Like I thought, and you can get into the whole medical piece of like, well, no, once you release these things in your brain, these endorphins and everything, then you just need more and more and more. But, a lot of people do opiates and that doesn't happen to them. I think there's just this internal pain that's so deep, that, and a disconnect, that moment of disconnecting from my dream, putting the arm out like that moment is what I think your whole film is exploring, actually. And can we get it back, man? Is it too late? Is it ever too late? That's why that opening little story of talking to you in the parking lot and then advocating for myself, it's like, fuck, girl, like, it's never too late, and if I buy into that, I might as well just put the arm out again.
It's something that I struggle a lot with, in that the desperation to chase my dreams of becoming an artist, it was the same stuff that fueled me as a drug addict. And in some ways, the like you said, like that final sort of like tipping point over of like, I'm just going to be a junkie now, it was like a relief from like the burden of that dream, which had become so oppressive. But after getting sober and after getting out of that life, feeling this sense of like that the opportunity was lost and it's like never coming back. And like some of that, because like some of that magic desperation that led to early success or like early hope, or at least that's how my brain.
Yeah, being 20 in New York, trying to live your dream, Stella Adler. And I mean, come on.
Yeah, getting record deals, like doing like having these crazy opportunities come to you. And it's happening effortlessly. Like, why wouldn't it happen all the time? And then, but that it hasn't happened all the time since coming out of it. And then it's like this weird game in my head, which is like, I know this is the disease of addiction talking to me, but it's like, well, if I was using again, like, would these opportunities like come back? Or like, would I regain that gift of like fucked up desperation that led me to like into these situations in the first place, Would
that first hit be like that first chasing the dragon, in London? Like I am just wrapped in God's arms. And, the sad part with what we're talking about is, for you and me, if it still worked, we wouldn't be sitting here on this podcast. We'd be out there in the street.
Hell yeah.
You know, fuck yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, the problem is that, that connection that the drug instantaneously gave me and the relief from the pain of me on me, so much me on me, ends up not working anymore. And you need more, and you need more. And I'm up to $200, $300 a day habit, 22 bags of dope a day, plus the Coke just to stay up, and then the Xanax, and then the everything else. And now I can't get any more money. And now everything's gone to shit. And I got to go get on a methadone program, man. 9 years on a fucking methadone program, because now I can't afford it. Now I'm in liquid handcuffs. Now I'm just like, and then that's where I started a really vicious Xanax habit, which is like, medically assisted treatment. It is such a double-edged sword. And I listened to your beautiful podcast with the lovely doctor from Emory.
Dr. Batiste. Yeah.
Oh my God. Like we are in a situation right now with fentanyl where if we don't have medically assisted treatment, when you said 10 people are dying every hour from opioid addiction, that doesn't even include alcoholism. It doesn't even include other drugs, This is opioid dependence. And so when that many people are dying, we have to have some kind of stopgap. But at the same time, methadone, people listen carefully, stops working too. So then you start adding other shit with your methadone and your psych meds, and they got you on this. And like, eventually, am I just going to, all of this stuff from the outside in was me just trying to get back to the place before I ever chased that first dragon. Was just me trying to get back to a place of normalcy where there's no, what I mean? Just a place of, if I could just have that moment back, and so now I got to get off everything if I'm going to try and figure out how to connect to people and myself without a substance, and make art again and write again and tell stories again and help other addicts, because this stuff is, we're dying out there, Athens, yeah, this isn't pretty here.
Well, real quick before we kind of move on to like sort of that like recovery and hope side of things. No, please don't apologize. I still just like, I can't even wrap my brain around some of the parallels just between me and you, because I know. So at some point you end up in the West Village,
Yes.
and then eventually at the Chelsea Hotel while you're still in active addiction. The West Village is where I bottomed out as well. Again, like
so crazy.
30 years later.
It's so crazy.
Yeah. So, and the thing that blows my mind is that I just thought I was so fucking unique. I thought I was so special.
Yeah.
I thought I was so special.
Well, I met this really cool, again, I meet a guy. God damn, my story sounds weird. I meet a guy who's really freaking cool. And he's got an apartment in the West Village at 45 Christopher, right next to Stonewall, right next to the duplex, right? And I'm just hanging out with him. He goes to Central Falls a lot too, back in the day. And, we have sort of a similar, we're just hanging out. And I'm with Shelby still in this Soho place. Everything's bottoming out for us. And this guy is like, you gotta get out of there. You gotta get your shit together. You gotta get off all this shit. He did coke once in a while, right? And so now I like, see you later, baby. I'm out of here. And I move in with this guy. And I use the coke to cure my dope addiction. Right? So now, so I'm doing so much coke.
Brilliant.
It's brilliant. I'm doing so much coke because I can't, trying to get off the dope. But of course, as we know, I'm going back to my love.
That's
to my
right.
love, So I get back on dope, and he's like, look, he was my total enabler. I mean, man, this guy, it was brilliant. He was great. He was sexy. He was hot. He was older than me. He took care of me. He gave me all the money I wanted. All I had to do was cry and scream and stomp and, just manipulate and be basically a horrible person. I stole from him. And finally, man, he put the hammer down. He was like, well, first he sent me to this guy in Jersey to do a rapid detox, like in the south of Jersey. They put me under 6 hours under anesthesia and give me Narcan, Aaron.
Oh my
6
God.
hours. And they tell me I'll be able to go back to work in 2 days.
What?
6 hours under anesthesia. And for a month, I could not walk, move, it was the worst thing that had ever happened to me. I went home in like a wheelchair and diapers. It was really, really, really bad. And then, of course, I didn't have a program. I didn't have, 12 steps. I didn't think I needed any of that. I thought I was cured. And I got a year because they put naltrexone pellets in the back of my arms. They cut and put these little pellets in there so that even if you were to use, you wouldn't be able to get high because it's a blocker. It blocks the opiates. And so they put one for 6 months, and then they did one here for another 6 months. And then that New Year's Eve, I'm cleaning out, how they have the idea that you clean everything New Year's Eve for the fresh start of the new year. And I'm going through the closet and I found a package of dope, 5 bundles of heroin.
Oh, man.
5 bundles, 50 bags of heroin that I had stashed that I forgot about. I'm only going to just do a teeny bit. I don't want to die like Red Hot Chili guitar player. I'm just thinking I'm going to do a teeny bit, just a teeny bit. 3 days later, that shit's gone. And I'm right back out there.
That's crazy. That reminds me, I had less than 30 days clean, but in recovery, I wanted it really bad and was working a program, and I had been through an outpatient detox program, and I was signing up for a job online to be an SAT tutor. And I needed some piece of identification, and I was trying to find my social security card or something. I was digging through my wallet, and a half gram of coke fell out that had been stuffed way up into my wallet. That I had that wallet had been in my pocket through detox or through rehab, through everything.
God.
And it fell out on the table in front of me. I was at my parents' house alone by myself, and that was it turned into the moment of that it gave me so much hope because I called the guy who was helping me. And I said,
Aaron, that's so amazing.
Called him. Yeah, and what was crazy is just like they promised me, the voice popped into my head of it fell on the table and it was like, pick up your phone. You know what I mean?
See, I had no tool. I had nothing, and for me it was like I found that and I was like, oh my God, thank God. I don't have to live like this anymore. This pain is too much. I had no tools, nothing. And then it wasn't shortly after that, I ended up on a methadone program. He kicked my ass to the curb. He's like, I'm done. You got to go. You got to get out.
Yeah.
And mind you, during all that time, I was quote unquote, and I hate this phrase, a functioning heroin addict. So in other words, I was directing shows. I was directing one-man shows. I was directing one-person shows. I was in the comedy world. I was doing a lot of improv. I was taking acting classes at a place called Michael Howard Studios, which is one of the best acting teachers of all time. He uses all the methods. I was really getting some skills. I was auditioning. I was trying to get back into the world. I did a film. Putting up plays, getting barns, doing the deal. And in the meantime, I'm in the bathroom at Michael Howard Studios, just doing little skin pops, because I certainly couldn't have time to find a vein, just keeping the shit rolling, And I had one girl that I was directing, my best girlfriend, Vanessa Hollingshead. I was directing her in her one-woman show. And I would be falling asleep on the couch in my living room at 45 Christopher. Michael's in the other room, and she's like, and at one point, like I had to come clean with everybody, like what was going on with me. I couldn't keep all the balls in the air anymore. I just came clean with everybody, kicked everyone out of my life. I'm going to be a junkie again. This is what I'm doing. Get out of my life. And she said, oh my God. And I thought I was just boring you. I didn't know you were high on heroin and nodding out. I thought my show was boring you. And I was like, oh my God, Vanny. And then, the night I walked away from her show, I actually got arrested on the Lower East Side. Right. It was right after 9/11. It was right during 9/11. And I thought, well, you can just buy drugs all the cops are down at 9/11. I can just buy drugs right out here, no problem.
I did want to ask you that because as I was running through my head, putting your timeline together, what was it like being an active junkie on 9/11? Because I was an active junkie during Hurricane Sandy, which like fucked my shit up. So I'm just curious, what was that day like for you in New York?
Well, living in the Village, that day, I was washing out some panties because probably who knows. Who the fuck knows what's going on? It's a junkie's life, right? And I'm hanging them out on this air conditioner vent, like kind of tucking it in the window and the vent and the thing of the AC so they'll dry quicker. And it's a crisp morning, September morning. And I got to get to my program. I got to get medicated. I got to get to the methadone program. And I would rollerblade all over New York City. I look up and I see this little poof come out of the World Trade Center, literally like just this little thing of smoke, like little poof. And I'm like, what the hell was that? And I was like, oh my God, did a plane just like I thought it was like a little teeny Cessna that I saw fly into the World Trade Centers. So I'm like, Michael, get up. This is the guy. I'm like, get up. Like, someone flew into the World Trade. He's like, honey, you're hallucinating. You've got to stop doing all that coke. God, stop it. Like, because I'm smoking crack. And he thinks I'm totally like geeking and seeing shit. And he's like, I'm like, no, I'm telling you. And then I turn on, the news. And there it is. Like, there it all is. So my first thought, and I'm so not proud of this, people, was, oh my God, I'm not going to get medicated. And it's so sad. My thought wasn't about, what was happening. My thoughts weren't about, people hurt. My thought wasn't about. To me, it just looked like a little thing of smoke coming out. I mean, this is my justification. Actually, like, it's not a big deal. I got to get to my program, And so by the time I got to my program, they had blocked off 14th Street. My program was on 12th, right across from St. Vincent's, 12th Street and 7th Avenue South. And when I went rollerbladed up, they had all the gurneys out, waiting. And we got in line for the program and they gave us all these take-homes because they didn't know what was going to happen. And I thought, oh God, it's Christmas. I get all these take-home bottles of methadone. How fun for me. And then all of a sudden, it started dawning on all of us what was really happening. That no one was coming, Aaron. No one was coming to the gurneys. We were waiting and waiting to just see what was going to happen. And then all of a sudden, we're looking right down 7th Avenue where you can see the World Trade. And you just watched one fall into the other. And that was when it hit me. Like, we're done. We're finished. It's over. It's okay. It's okay to die now. But that was my 9/11 day. That day is so bittersweet because it's also a moment of like, you got to get help. It wasn't until 4 years later I got really sick with endocarditis from shooting coke, dirty coke. My heart got really sick and I ended up in the hospital on antibiotics for 2 months. And that was that started the beginning of the end of, there were many other things no money, having to do things you got to do to make money as a woman, living at the Chelsea Hotel, doing those things, and it just all felt like, yeah, see, this is what you get. This is what you deserve. This is who you really are. This is who you've been since you were abused and harmed since you were a little girl, like living it out now, and it's just so sad. And I think that's why, God, when I read your script, just to bring it back to the script and get it off me for a minute, because it really is what this is about, for me, is like, and when you sent me that text, like, I don't know if I'm good enough. I don't know if this is good enough. I'm like, man, just come back to your material, your source material, like your first principle, or maybe it's your second principle. I can't remember why you're doing this, which is, honesty, to tell the story of like why you're doing this. And there's nothing extra in this movie,
Well, one thing that the movie leaves ambiguous is sort of what happens next for this couple. But you have an amazing what happens next. How long have you been clean and sober now?
In December, it'll be 18 years.
18 years.
Sober longer than I was using. God, thank God.
Jeez. Yeah. I just crossed that threshold myself.
Isn't that amazing?
Yeah, I was in active addiction for 10 years, and now it's like 10 and a half that I've been without going into,
too much. Because we're here.
Too much detail.
Yeah.
Like what was that like? And I also know that yoga was like a part of that story as well.
Yeah. So what happened was I ended up having to go into a methadone to abstinence program because I just couldn't. I would try to kick it on my own, little capfuls, couldn't do it. I had to go in, and the jig was up, and I had to go into a place where they slowly detox you off methadone. These places are very, very few and far between in our country. And I was, really blessed and lucky enough to end up in Jamaica, Queens, in between a junkyard and Long Island Railroad tracks, where every good junkie goes to die. And it's like, that's where they put us, man. That's where you end up, and it took me 5 months to get off the methadone. I stayed there another 12. I stayed there 19 months because I had to figure out all the things. I had to figure out how to live. I had to figure out who I was. I had to, let people help me figure all that out. I had to. And I didn't go in there all ready to get clean and sober either. I wasn't like, this was a hellish detox. I'm writing a TV show now called Methadonia. And it was 20 women, 60 men. There were like 14 people there voluntarily. I was one of them. Most people were there beating a bed, trying not to go back to jail. It was a very tough environment. It was jail where the inmates run the prison. And when I got out, that same girlfriend, Vanessa, took me in and gave me a place to live. Michael was still in my life, but he didn't want anything to do with me. He was too scared. And Vanessa was like, come live with me. We'll help get you back on your feet, which was amazing. At that time, she was like, you need to go to this writing class with Francine Volpe. I was trying to write this play about Macedonia. And she was giving me feedback on the play, and she was like, look, I've been giving you the same feedback week to week, week to week, week to week, and you're not taking it. You're not able to hear me. And she said, here's my feedback. You have to go to hot yoga with me, Bikram yoga. I was like, what? So it took me a while to get there with her because I had body image issues from shooting up in track marks. And, I got there, and that first class in that first Savasana, I was like laying on the floor, sweat dripping everywhere, everything coming out of my nose. I'm bawling, I'm crying. There's sweat coming out of parts of me I don't even know I had. I'm just like, what is going on? And I'm like looking at her in the front row in this little bikini, this hot little chick like doing yoga. And I'm like, what is happening here? And that little voice, the one you just talked about, the picking up the phone, the little voice inside of me just said, you got to bring yoga to the rest, every single addict in the world. This is your new mission. this is your job. And I'd already been working, 12-step program and things like that. And this was like, this was the missing ingredient as far as the body piece of yoga. I was a walking head. I'd never thought much below my head, because that's what alcoholics and drug addicts do. We live in our heads. And so when I was connected, it was like that same connection of that God moment. It was that same thing in that first Savasana. It was warm. I was being held. I was sweating. I mean, you had to work a lot fucking harder for it. But I was like, oh my God, it's here it is. And it was healthy, and it was, and so I set out on that mission, man. Yeah.
So fast forwarding to now, you're living in Athens, Georgia, you're teaching yoga, and then you also have this incredible program called One Posture at a Time. Tell me about that.
So One Posture at a Time, I started in New York because I'd written this article in the New York Times about, how my experience with hot yoga, Bikram yoga, I got a scholarship to go to training for 9 weeks to become a hot yoga teacher. And so to honor that, one of my missions was to bring yoga into rehabs, detoxes, jails, wherever they'll have me, I'll go. And so I wrote that in a New York Times article, so that I was like, because Aaron, now I got to do it. Like, fuck.
Yeah.
Service keeps me sober, but service hurts. By that, I mean, it's uncomfortable. It shouldn't be convenient. It's not convenient. The phone rings 4 a.m, someone wants to drink, what all these things, it's like service isn't, it should be push me out of my comfort zone, but now I wrote this thing in the New York Times that said, and now I'm going to blah, 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 look at me. And now I got it. And being in recovery, I got to keep the promise, because otherwise, you know how it goes for us. So yeah. I'm like, okay, I'm going to do this. And so we started our little journey rolling yoga mats in little rolly carts all over New York, up and down the trains, taking them into treatment facilities. The first treatment facility I walked back into was the one I got sober in. The ability to walk in with a yoga mat rolled under my arm, rather than coming back in as a retread retread, or whatever you want to call it. Coming back in the right way through the front door. There are no words for what that meant. And then that first class I taught Aaron, there was a guy detoxing. He was on 5 milligrams of methadone. He hadn't slept for days and days. And he's like, I'm not doing this fucking yoga. Fuck you, and fuck this place, and I'm fucking out. And I was just like me. That was me on 5 milligrams, and I'm looking at it and I'm just like, okay, well, just lay on your mat, let the words wash over you. It doesn't matter. I don't care what you do, but you got to be here. You got to just lay on your mat. And I'm telling you, Aaron, by the end of the class, this guy is snoring. And I was like, if one of you fuckers say one word and wake this guy up, I'm going to kill you. Everybody tiptoe out of here. It's like the first time. And that moment was such a moment of grace. All these moments of grace started to, I just started seeing them, and I had never seen them in my life before, Yeah. So One Posture at a Time, I bring it into a place here in Athens. COVID really kind of screwed us all up, but we're kind of getting back on the horse back in there. We go 3 times a week. And Nez Peterson helps me. Yeah, she's a teacher at Fuel. And Jolynn, who owns Fuel, holds all these fundraisers and these amazing things that, are able to keep the mission going. The little fits and spurts and starts and fits and all the little things we've been through, or somehow we're hanging on and doing it.
And Fuel Hot Yoga in Athens, Georgia is literally the best yoga studio I've ever been to. Absolutely world class in this this small Georgian town. It's just such a privilege. As you look back on this just incredible story that you've shared with us today, what are you most grateful for? Where does the gratitude come from for you?
I think just being at peace and having freedom from bondage. I'm so grateful that I can roll over and, not pick up a syringe and a spoon and that be the first fucking thing I do. And then, grab a hairbrush because now I'm scratching. I got to scratch, because the dope made me itch. And, those were the first two things I did every morning for years. Or not have to wake up and run to the methadone program to get medicated, like always having to like get a fix and get it in and get to the Xanax dealer, God, I'm so grateful to not have those handcuffs. We call them the liquid handcuffs, whatever it is, that outside thing. Like I even watch my yoga, like how do I run to yoga? Am I running to yoga to escape, to not feel, or am I running towards something that is, going to enable more freedom and the ability for more love and, the ability to create community?
That idea of am I running from or am I running to is something that has haunted me even back to the using days and has stuck with me ever since. And is a question that I that pops into my head quite frequently too. It's really funny to hear you say that because that's one of those little things that has stuck with me for almost 15 years.
And then add in there, do I need to just sit still?
Yeah,
just sit still and breathe. When we were doing the shoot, and you came over to me and you were like, I need you to just pull on your yoga right now. Just sit and breathe, because I'm gonna tell you that family dynamic, I was like right back there with that, like, just get your fucking shit together. What's the matter with you? Like being that person to Viv, it was so, whew. And when you came over and you were like, be still and breathe right now. Just breathe, be still and breathe right now. It was really intense. And, when Millie came over and was sitting with me, I was like, oh my God, I love you so much right now. Not actor to actor, but also Edith to Viv,
Well, the funny thing is that was probably one of those moments where I was just telling you the thing that I was like, wish someone would tell to me,
Oh,
I'm just sit and breathe,
yeah.
because I was pretty stressed out during that scene. That was definitely like my most stressful moment on set from the first few shoot days. And it was after that, and really when I called you on the phone after we had.
Oh, I was so happy you called me because I didn't know. It's like I heard the podcast where you were like, I didn't know if I had to move to, and I know that's how it works, But you were different. You called,
Yeah, it's a terrible feeling being an actor coming onto a set, like doing your best to like pour your heart out, and then the production's like, all right, moving on, and they just like storm out. They're just like a bumbling mess, like in a cartoon where it's like a pile of dust with like arms and legs. They like move on to the next thing, and you're just like, all right, guess I'm gonna go home. Like no applause, no conclusion to your performance, no curtain calls, no flowers, no nothing. And I hate that feeling.
I remember turning to Jade. I turned to Jade and I was like, Jade, was it okay? She was like, oh my God, of course, you know what I mean? Because I was like, she was awesome.
Oh, Jade Fernandez is a great mutual friend of ours, who is serving as our second AC and just all around like production queen. Is amazing.
And your crew is fucking dynamite.
Oh yeah, they're amazing.
They understand the mission. They're really cool. I got to have some really cool conversations, man.
Cool.
They're real honest, cool people. You know what else? And I also I'm really grateful that you gave me an opportunity. I mean, that's really awakened this side of me that I'm like, Jade, I'm coming to that improv night. I'll see you there. Jade, I'm coming. I'm going over there and I'm doing this and I'm starting a writer's group and you'll see. I'm just, I just want to, it's really been a big shot in the arm, no pun intended. Literally to like, what are you doing, girl? How you living, with your art? Like, how is your artist life? Like, I get to create in yoga for sure. It is beautiful creation of it's fantastic, but it's not it's not my voice in it's a yoga voice. It's not my my other voice that I want to help others with as you are.
That's amazing. I mean, you've got an incredible story. You've got so much talent, and follow your impulses till forever.
Thank you so much, Aaron, for making this movie, for trusting your gut, and not giving up, because you have a lot of reasons to give up. You do. We just all do. You think it's the easier, softer way until you lay your head on the pillow at night, which is, again, the theme of the whole film. People, this film is going to be great. Get ready.
Jeanne, thank you so much for joining me today. Where can people find you, follow you? Where can they keep up with One Posture at a Time? How can they support your work?
So I'm on the gram at One Posture at a Time. My last name's Heaton, so I'm also on Facebook, but it's Jeanne Ellen Heaton. But I will put it out there that I'm very transparent. I do get messages. If anybody is struggling with addiction, if anybody needs help, if anybody's wants to try hot yoga and come to Fuel, and you're trying to get off some substance, or maybe it's just you're going through a bad divorce or anything, with the suicide rate and all of the things, guys, don't stay to yourself. You're not going to fix it yourself. My phone number is kind of splattered all over my social media. Might not be so smart, but there it is. And that's purposeful, because I want people to be able to reach out to me and have a place to go. Fuel is an amazing community. And there's many other things I do to stay sober, 12 steps. So please just don't hesitate. I'm here for you. Athens, we're here for you, man. Aaron's here for you. We're all here for you. That's what this is about.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for
Thank
saying
you,
that.
Aaron.
Thank you for all the work you do. Thank you, everyone out there who is listening. As always, you can email me, behindtheslatepod@gmail.com. That's behindtheslatepod@gmail.com. We got some more good stuff coming up for you next week. And until next time, that's a wrap.
There was Jordan Bob Ford, drank it out of a gourd in order just to suit. Frank James out on bail, drank it out of a pail, a juice of that forbidden fruit. And ever since then, old man, the blind and the lame and the mute, the bankers and Turks, politicians and Turks, drank a juice of that forbidden fruit.